Welcome back to These Things Are Written on this Tuesday. Glad that you're joining us as we continued our study on Amos, picking up Amos chapter 1, verse 3. I'm going to read a part of it, maybe a verse at a time, talk about it, and help us to understand. Instead of reading it all the way through and basically reading it again as I go through it, we'll do this way. All right. Verse 3, thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not revoke the punishment, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing sledges of iron. This follows the format of the prophecies against the nations in chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Amos. They begin with the phrase, thus says the Lord. And then, for 3 transgressions of, insert the nation's name here, and for 4, I will not revoke the punishment. In other words, what they have done, while there is usually only 1 or 2 things listed, this is just a sampling of the transgressions that they have done. Again, and that is why God is going to send this punishment that cannot be taken away. What has the people of Damascus done? They have threshed Gilead with threshing sledges of iron. Now, Gilead, if you look on the map, actually, if you look on the first map, we're going to see Damascus it really refers to the nation of Aram. It is to the north and east of Israel. It's also called Syria. So later on, it will say the people of Syria will go into exile. It's talking again about Damascus or Aram. Different words are used for those. Often, the countries are known by their capital cities. So often, Israel is known as Samaria. Syria or Aram is known as Damascus. And now, if we look at Gilead, the part that they threshed, what is Gilead? Well, it is the part of Israel that is east of the Jordan River, as you see it circled on the map. This is separated from the rest of Israel by the Jordan River, which provided a barrier that at times would not be possible to cross. So the people in Gilead would often be attacked, be raided on by people of other nations. Damascus must have done this to the people of Gilead, threshed them with sledges of iron. In other words, devastating to the land. So what's the result of this? The Lord continues, so I will send a fire upon the house of Hazael, and it shall devour the strongholds of Ben-Hadad. Great parallelism in those verses. Hazael, I should say, is the head of the house. He is the one that started the dynasty of the current king of Aram. The current king is Ben-Hadad. So by mentioning both the house of Hazael, often, for example, after David, Judah is known as the house of David, the kings are. And here it is the house of Hazael. And it shall devour the strongholds of Ben-Hadad. Again, great parallelism. I will break the gate bar of Damascus and cut off the inhabitants from the valley of Avron, and him who holds the scepter from Beth Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into exile into Kir. As we look at this part, breaking the gates of Damascus, what would happen? Damascus would be invaded, cut off the inhabitants of the valley of Avron. Avron and Beth Eden are 2 places that are kind of disputed by the scholars on where they are. These places are places of uncertainty, but the people were most likely in alliance with the king of Syria. So they also would be cut off from Damascus. And the people of Syria shall go into exile into Kir. This exile would happen around 30 years later when the king of Assyria would come and would take the men off into exile, bring other men to populate the land. That is how the Assyrians got rid of any kind of nationalistic feeling. Where Ker is, scholars aren't really sure on that. Let's continue now with verse 6. Again, verse 6 follows that same pattern. For 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4 I will not revoke punishment, because they carried into exile a whole people to deliver them to Eden. So again, following that pattern, where is Gaza? Again, if you look at the map, it is also known as Philistia. It is where the Philistines were. Remember, the Philistines were the enemies of King David and of God's people at the time of Judges, at the time of David, and still even now during the time of Uzziah and Jeroboam. And now Gaza will be punished because they carried into exile a whole people. They would attack a city and deliver them, a city probably of Judah, maybe of Israel, but would carry them to captivity in Edom. Again, continuing with verse 7. So here's the punishment. I will send a fire upon the wall of Gaza, and it shall devour her stronghold. I will cut off the inhabitants of Ashdod, and him who holds the scepter from Ascalon. I will turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, says the Lord God. If you look at all of these, set fire upon the wall of Gaza, again, the capital city of the Philistines. Ashdod is a major city. Ashkelon is another one. Ekron is another. The remnant of the Philistines would perish. The nation would be destroyed by the Assyrians, again, about 30 years after this. And they would go, their nation would simply be destroyed and not to be mentioned again. A lot of punishment. And again, during the lot of Amos, especially the first part, we see that. It's a reminder that God does repay for the sins, the evil that people do sometimes in this life. But the promise that we have, the threat that they have, I should say more like it, is the punishment they will receive eternally. We trust in the Lord, so our punishment was taken upon his son Jesus on the cross. We'll continue with this tomorrow. Come back. Hope to see you then. God bless.